Here's my discussion regarding the climate change and bureaucracy by me, Global Arch. What are two things you found interesting after visiting the links above? How do you and your loved ones stay cold during hot weather? Okay, first thing I found interesting is how much energy Americans use compared to other countries. Like, I know the U.S. use significant amount of energy in their day-to-day lives, but I didn't think it could be that much more compared to other countries. For example, when you think of like Tokyo, the entire city's like shining with billboards and ads and all sorts of lights. So I thought we wouldn't be too high when you've got examples like that all over the country. But to find out the usage of electricity was roughly 200% more than other countries, it was ridiculous to me. I didn't see that coming. Uh, it just goes to show how much capitalism has been ingrained into our society. Additionally, I thought it was interesting that they never mentioned the possibility of nuclear energy as being a replacement for these fossil fuels. While I mean, sure, there are plenty downsides to using nuclear energy, uh, with the main concern being the waste that is produced, the highly potent waste that takes hundreds of thousands of years to actually go away. I see this as a big risk, big reward system, where if you take the necessary precautions to disposing of the nuclear waste, you'll be fine. I mean, while it is yes very potent and it takes a very long time to go away, the amount of uh, nuclear waste that is produced is actually very finite in quantity. So I I feel like that'd be a great solution if you really wanted to get rid of fossil fuels in like a short time. You could just swap back to nuclear, and it would be a great solution. So I found it weird when they didn't talk about the possibility of nuclear energy being a potential solution that they could use. Instead, none of these articles really mentioned the possibility of nuclear energy as being a viable answer. To answer the second part of the question, my family mostly stays inside, drinks water, eats ice cream. I know we should probably find some healthier things. Sometimes we go out to the river, do some inner tubing, maybe do a little swimming, go fishing, that sort of thing. But most of the time, I'm out on the golf course, so nothing too crazy. Okay, what in the there we go? Still happened. Okay, how do you think our country should address climate change? I think in order to deal with climate change, I think our country should invest heavily in renewable research options and invest heavily in effective and clean energy producers, such as like we've got solar, we've got wind, all that fun stuff. Additionally, we could find when we're researching, we could find new ways to make these current ways of producing energies much more efficient. Like for solar and for wind, I know are highly inefficient ways of making energy, so you've got to do these massive plants. But if you could find a way to make them, I don't know, like 50% more viable, that would be huge. That would be great. And not to mention, doing this would allow us to slowly cut the need for fossil fuels altogether. So by researching and slowly implementing these cleaner uh, energies, we won't have to do fossil fuels because it's not like today in our modern era we can just swap off of fossil fuels. It's too ingrained into our society. It's the cheapest. However, it's the worst for the environment. So we need some time to make these cleaner energies not only cheaper, but they also need the infrastructure to sustain what they're doing. Otherwise, you'll see places like that are more poor or less developed, such as like India and Africa. They will continue to use these fossil fuels not because they want to or they have something against the environment. Because I don't know, the poop festival kind of hit hard in India. However, they're just doing it because they don't have the necessary resources uh, to implement these clean energy solutions, whether that is the infrastructure or, like I said, they just don't have the resources, money, all that fun stuff. Uh, with that being said, I think the government should pass some policies not only funding but promoting the use of clean energy. This way, Americans would be incentivized to make a switch to cleaner source of energy. I, however, don't really want the government to ban the use of fossil fuels outright because, like I said, it hurt a lot of businesses and a lot of people couldn't do it like justifiably switch over because they don't have the infrastructure or the money uh, due to the fact that we still heavily rely on these fossil fuels. Next one. Ah, are bureaucracies useful to addressing climate change? Which branch of government is best suited to address the problem? Okay. I do think bureaucracies are useful when it comes to climate change because they're able to implement laws or ideas that everyone kind of has to follow if they're living in that in their jurisdiction, I should say. However, there is a careful balance that these bureaucracies must follow. Otherwise, it's going to be very bad for everyone involved. For instance, when these different branches of governments or bureaucracies are going to pass new laws that restrict business use of certain energies, so we'll say fossil fuels in this instance because well, we're trying to get rid of fossil fuels. You've got to do a couple things. First, you got to make sure that what you're asking is feasible. Like right now, if you were to straight up ban fossil fuels, not a lot of people would be able to comply, mainly due to the fact that our infrastructure for these cleaner and better sources of energy are just non-existent in the modern day. However, so that's kind of the first thing you need to do. The second thing you have to do is make sure that passing the law won't just crash the market. What I mean by that is if you make everyone change energy from fossil fuels to solar or wind or hydroelectric, like we do, should have mentioned that sooner. Uh, while it could theoretically be possible in, like, I don't know, maybe a decade, we'd have the necessary infrastructure. But if this energy, this cleaner and better energy, is like 100 times more expensive than the fossil fuels that we're using, um, that would totally destroy the market. The prices of everything would go up. A lot of small businesses would go under. A lot of businesses would just leave the U.S. entirely, hurting our economy. It would just be catastrophic. So that's the downside to passing these laws. That's why I don't really like the idea of these legislative branches passing laws that would restrict American businesses when it comes to energy supply, because a lot of people just pick whatever's the cheapest, and it's kind of how that works. This is why I think the legislative branch of government could do some good when it comes to addressing these climate concerns. However, I'd like them to stay out of this specific line of thinking. Instead, I'd like them to, like I said previously, research, give funding to research, and give funding to like the promotion of clean energy, like incentives to switch. Like I said before, uh, this is how the legislative branch could effectively deal with climate change, in my opinion. The reason why I don't mention the other two branches is because the judicial branch interprets the laws and the executive branch enforces laws, neither of which is really helpful when you're trying to deal with the climate change threat. So that's why I think the best branch of government suited to address climate change would be the legislative, because they actually pass laws and they also approve funding. So that's why I think they should do that. And then here are my script when I'm following, kind of. I did notice when reading the script for the first time, the first line, it says Electoral College. It's not supposed to say Electoral College, it's supposed to be the title of it, which kind of forgot climate change and bureaucracy, so just pay that no mind. And then that should be it.